Hey, Joe Bob Briggs here with the #1 rule for a TNT Monstervision movie. Anybody can die at any moment.
Get Stung by Skeeter. Next on TNT's Monstervision.
Hey, I'm Joe Bob Briggs, and do you guys remember Chub Frick? You know, ex-pro bowler, uncle of my second ex-wife, smokes White Owls from the 7-Eleven. Remember that guy? Okay. Well, everybody in the whole dang family's been hacked off all week because Chub Frick showed up at the family reunion with his new mail-order wife from the Philippines. And actually, I'm not supposed to call her a mail-order wife because it makes Chub mad. He tried to get her through the mail, but they made him actually fly over there and pick her up. But he spent $1,200 on a plane ticket to go over there, and he didn't want that ignored. So anyhow, Chub just turned 68, and his wife just turned 17. Now, we know this because all the women at the reunion badgered the poor age so they could go around saying, he's 4 times her age, he's 4 times her age. And what's really remarkable is that if you figure it out, he's exactly 4 times her age. But who would automatically think to do that? Who would start doing long division in their head before they even met the girl? Women, that's who would do that. It was only the women who were going around doing computer logarithms in their heads because all the men were thinking, way to go, Chub. Does she have any sisters over there? Of course, we weren't saying that out loud. You know, you can't actually say things like that. You're obligated by law to stand around saying, oh, yes, you're right. Well, the novelty will wear off of that relationship. They'll run out of things to talk about. Yeah, it's so sad. She probably has low self-esteem, the poor girl. Well, meanwhile, this gal looks incredibly happy, and more important to the gawking male Briggses at the reunion, incredibly sexy in her little moo-moo shift draped all over 90 pounds of her curvy miniature doll body. Not that I noticed that, of course. You know, I sauntered over to this gal at one point, you know, just to kind of meet her, and I said, so, what kind of stuff were you into back in the Philippines? And I had to repeat that a couple times because her main language is something only spoken by about 30 people on an island in the South China Sea. But finally she says, oh, sewing, cooking, reading, and making a nice cozy home for my husband. So I go, bingo! You know, I walk over to Chub, and Chub is grinning like a cheetah, and I say, I got to hand it to you, man. This is why we fought Guadalcanal, you know? I mean, I'll never be able to look at that Iwo Jima statue again without a giant tear coming to my eye. And Chub, he's looking at least 20 years younger. I asked him how he even got the idea to do this, and he said, well, I saw this ad in the back of Guns and Ammo, and it said, Filipino wives will love you forever, and they don't talk too much, and it sounded good to me. And so, well, it sounded good to all of us. So, as I rejoined Wanda Bodine at the buffet table, I said, yeah, Chub, he's a miserable man. He's realizing that he married a child and that they have nothing in common. It's just so sad. But Wanda didn't answer me right off, and I knew something was wrong. She just glared at the little Filipina doll wife. And maybe it's my imagination, but I saw something flash behind her eyeballs that looked like homicide. Now, I'm not going to think about it, okay? And speaking of brutal politics, this week's movie is Skeeter. Remember that one? And it's the first of 2 offerings in what we call Dead Cow Night on Monstervision. The cattle are turning up dead all over the West, and it depends on which evil conspiracy you believe as to why it's happening. And Skeeter, the first movie, it has something to do with these giant mosquitoes that live in an underground mine, and they dive bomb cattle and tourists and eat their faces off so that an evil developer can buy cheap land. And then the second movie is Endangered Species, where somebody or something is doing those perfect surgical incisions on cattle and leaving them out in the fields for Robert Urich to figure out. Is it aliens or is it our own United States government? You'll just have to see. But first we watch the sensitive story of a mild-mannered motorcycle-riding outdoor sculptor and deputy sheriff in a little desert town who's still in love with the girl who left him years ago, but meanwhile he's got to deal with these bodies that keep turning up on the country roads, victims of random attacks by enormous, aggressive, flesh-chewing bloodsuckers. And the sheriff, played by the great Charles Napier, doesn't seem to care that much that the people are dying, especially the people who have big cattle ranches coveted by a millionaire subdivision developer Way too much plot in this movie, you know? And so it's time that water quality expert William Sanderson come to town and shake things up. William Sanderson, you know who he is? You don't know? He's best known as Larry of Larry, Daryl, and Daryl fame on the Newhart Show. Okay, we're out of time. We'll do the drive-in totals after the first break, at the first break. So just roll the film.
Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and Skeeter on TNT.
Whoa, just stop with the plot already. You got way too much plot getting in the way of the story here. We got big barrels being unloaded off trucks into an abandoned mine and some kind of conspiracy involving Mr. Drake, and then we got the guy who runs out of the shed and runs his motorcycle off the cliff, but we don't know why, and we got the sensitive deputy sheriff who does metal sculptures in his garden, and his ponytailed Indian sidekick partner who does too much peyote, and Dorothy, who's worried about her boys, and the Crosby funeral, and Sarah, the beautiful redhead that Roy used to be in love with and still is, but she went away, and dead cattle and dead people, and Michael J. Pollard wandering around spouting weird sayings, and a new subdivision being built by a crazed man in a white limo, and a quirky water inspector, and a sheriff who acts mean to outsiders, and Laura's daddy who's sad because he's being pressured to move, and some hand-holding between Roy and Sarah, and an Indian ritual, and contaminated water holes, and right in the middle of this, you've got the one thing we wanted to see, a giant mosquito attack. You know, without knowing anything else about it, I can tell you exactly what's going on here. It's one of those directors who said, well, it's not really a horror movie. You see, it's a drama with horror elements. Why do they do this? Why do they ruin perfectly good movies by thinking they're Ingmar Bergman? You know? All right. Were you taking notes on that? I hope so, because we'll be passing out programs later. So let's get back to Skeeter. Just burns my bacon, though. You know, if you're going to advertise a movie like this, let's eat some face, okay? How many times do I have to tell you people that? You're going to make a horror movie? Make a horror movie, you know? They should have me teach a course at USC Film School. I'm telling you, I swear to God, just don't get me started on that subject.
Back to Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and Skeeter on TNT.
All right, important mosquito facts. You need to know this to fully appreciate Skeeter. There are how many species of mosquitoes in the known world? Anybody, just shout it out.
2005.
That's right, you looked at this, didn't you? 2,700 species of mosquitoes. Average weight of a mosquito, 2 milligrams. That's about the weight of a piece of pocket fuzz, right? Average serving, how much can they suck? 5 microliters, or 5 millionths of 1 liter. Average flying speed of a mosquito, 1 mile per hour. Lifespan, 15 to 65 days. Many of them die young because look at the chances they take. They go to family reunion picnics all the time, right? They can detect a suckable human from up to 25 to 30 meters away. Why are we using the metric system here, by the way? You know, how far is that? I don't know how far that is. That's 40, long way away. They can tell if you're suckable. Mosquito eggs can be dormant for a whole year, and they only hatch when you flood them with water. And did you know this? Males never suck. Only females suck. Males just eat plants like normal insects. And most important, the plural form of mosquito is spelled M-O-S-Q-U-I-T-O-E-S, if you are listening, Dan Quayle. Now, I think you'll be better equipped to know what the mutant mosquito is going through when you see the upcoming Skeeter Cam, the story told from the mosquito's point of view in Skeeter. And, oh yeah, and I almost forgot, because I keep forgetting to do this. We didn't do the drive-in totals before, so I'm going to do them now. We've got 8 dead bodies, 10 dead cattle, 50 dead mosquitoes, 5 giant mosquito attacks, blood-sucking, 1 motor vehicle chase with cliff plunge, 1 bad peyote trip, 1 giant dead mosquito splattered on a windshield, 1 fist fight, 1 gun battle, 1 exploding mine with fireball, gratuitous Michael J. Pollard, Kung Fu, Taser Fu, blowtorch foo, and, of course, Skeeter foo. I'm going to give it 2 stars, you know, so check it out. We'll be hanging around during the breaks the rest of the night, giving you some tips on how to kill insects in a way that is most painful to the insect.
Division host Joe Bob Briggs and Skeeter on TNT.
So now we got the whole Roy and Sarah love story subplot going on. What is that, about the 74th subplot going on in this movie? Good grief. Those 2 actors are Jim Youngs and Tracy Griffith, and when they were making this movie, Tracy gave an interview to Fangoria magazine. And by the way, I want to thank the guys at Fangoria, because a lot of times people write in and they say, Joe Bob, how do you know all that trivia about all those movies? And one good reason is my buddies at Fangoria, who eat, live, and breathe horror movies 24 hours a day. They know absolutely everything, and they'll send me information about them. So pick up a copy of Fangoria. It's the granddaddy of all horror film magazines. Very entertaining. Anyhow, Tracy Griffith gives this interview to Fangoria where she says, the real message of this movie is that you have to see what's going on around you. This could happen. So she believes that giant mosquitoes could happen, and she uses the Chernobyl nuclear accident as an example of just how wacky nature can be. There were 3-headed catfish all over that lake in Russia. So anyway, Tracy's really into her role here, which is as it should be, I think. So personally, I would like to see a little more blood-sucking and a little less of the scenes where Tracy says, I don't know, Roy, something's changed here, something's different. You know, we get that, okay? So just go, all right? Fangoria, first of the Gopher Guts magazines, you know? They'd run these pictures of gross-out special effects that only last about 2 seconds on screen, but you could buy the magazine and put the color pictures up on your wall and make your sister puke. It's a great magazine. That was the famous mosquito vision shot where we see the hapless victim as he's being dive-bombed by the killer Skeeter from the mosquito's point of view. That's outstanding. I do like that. They used a little helicopter to do that. They had this helicopter about 5 feet long and 150 pounds that they could operate with a remote control, and it carried a 200-foot load of film. Very cool. Unfortunately, we have no idea where the cackling maniac joyrider came from in the story and why he's arguing with his Daisy Mae girlfriend out there in the middle of the desert, but they keep introducing new characters. There must be 340 characters in this movie. And where did Luther come from? You know, the old guy who gives up and leaves his land and everything. And is it my imagination, or did Buck Flower just tell a flashback story about getting attacked by a giant mosquito while he was fishing in the swamp? Now we've got flashbacks to deal with. I hate flashbacks. All right, come on, let's go. Move it, you know? Only kidding. I've been wanting to do that all night, you know? People do.
Back to Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and Skeeter on TNT.
Well, those giant mosquitoes are pretty dang cheesy, aren't they? Looks like big plastic cootie sets they glue on the actors' faces. But anyhow, I meant to mention before that the sheriff is played by Charles Napier, and I'm a major Charles Napier fan. Charles started out in the early 60s doing those ultra cheapy flicks for Russ Meyer, some of them X-rated. And then he's gradually moved up through the food chain. He made Rambo in 1985. He was Murdoch, the guy who was tracking down Stallone. And then he actually had the lead in a movie called The Night Stalker in 1987. And I don't care what he's doing, it's always a great performance. He can be the meanest man alive. He's got that Jack Warden sneer, big brawny guy, got that amazing jaw. Charles Napier. Never run across him in person, though. So, Charles, if you're watching, give me a call sometime. Come visit us here on Monstervision. It'd be an honor. All right, the giant mosquitoes just killed the hitmen, which is good because it means 2 less characters to keep track of. So, roll it. What's that movie that Charles Napier stomps that guy to death? Vixen? Or Super Vixen? Or Beyond the Valley of the Ultra Vixens? I can't never keep all those Vixens straight. Emmanuel Goes to Encino, one of those movies. Russ Meyer made so many of those babies, they all blur together. Either that or I've watched so many of these movies I'm getting actual brain damage, so I don't want to think about that.
Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and Skeeter on TNT.
Are you ready? Are you ready for the greatest giant mosquito attack sequence ever filmed? Of course, all the giant mosquito attack sequences ever filmed are in this one movie. But they tried, they did the best they could. This was the directing debut of Clark Brandon, an actor turned director, and he only had a couple million to work with, and so the special effects are a little on the flimsy side, but he tried. He had all these Skeeter models. The biggest ones, the ones you're about to see in the scenes coming up, those Skeeters were 3.5 feet long. And of course, that's the limitation of a low-budget movie, because in Texas, we've seen mosquitoes that big, you know? But I have two questions before we watch the thrilling conclusion of Skeeter. First, if you're gonna make a movie about killer mosquitoes, why wouldn't you make it somewhere like Louisiana or Mississippi, some humid and swampy and wet place? Why would you make it out in the desert? And number two, how come nobody in the movie ever puts on insect repellent? I'm just asking. Go, roll it. Insect repellent. Don't you just love the feel of sticky, smelly insect repellent all over your arms and legs? Really helps you enjoy that baseball game, doesn't it, you know? Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. Half the popcorn in your bag just got stuck to my elbow. Pardon me. Joe Bob Briggs still here, and all I have to say is, isn't that sweet? Roy and Sarah are going to get married and live in the little pitiful desert town together for the rest of their lives. But I have to say, that final mosquito attack on Charles Napier was about the funniest thing I've ever seen. Whoa! It's a plastic thing stuck on his face. So much for the classic 90s horror flick, Skeeter. They had hopes of a Skeeter 2, but I don't think so. All right, next week on Monstervision, we've got It's Alive 3. You just can't beat an It's Alive movie for sheer entertainment value. My buddy Larry Cohen makes those things. Killer baby movies. Remember the poster for the first one? There's only one thing wrong with the Jarvis baby. It's alive. And then our second feature will be Look What Happened to Rosemary's Baby, the sequel to the 60s horror classic. So what can I say? Killer baby night on Monstervision. Right now, though, time for Joe Bob's last call, and we move from the desert of California to the highlands of Colorado, where there are still more dead cattle cluttering up the ranches. And this time it's Robert Urich and Jo Beth Williams who are falling in love while trying to figure out the source of the mysterious cattle mutilations. And when this came out, there was a lot of stuff in the news about mutilated cattle that would be found on the ranches out west, and they had all kinds of theories that it was aliens who wanted to study animal life, because they would find these dead cows with perfect surgical incisions and all their inner organs removed. So Alan Rudolph, the director, is kind of trying to put this across as a true story. You know, as Tracy Griffith said about the giant killer mosquitoes, it could happen. So, all right, I don't want to spoil it for you if you haven't seen it, so I'll just give you those drive-in totals and we'll be off and running. We have 3 dead bodies, 9 dead cows, 1 cattle stampede, laser cow zapping, 5 motor vehicle chases with 3 crashes, 1 barroom brawl, close-up bovine surgery, 1 satanic barn burning, minor aardvarking, 1 poison toothbrush, helicopter cow napping, 1 death plunge, dead cow dangling, kung fu, morphine foo. It's a little confusing, so I'm going to give it 2.5 stars. Check it out, and I'll be here all night long. Counting cows. You know how guys in the country will say that? What you been doing, Ben? Counting cows. Some of those little Texas towns, that's entertainment, counting cows. It's either that or watch the Texaco sign revolve.